Welcome cultists to another video on painting the Woodsman, focusing again on the base, and in this installment we're going to be painting the backdrop in 2 dimensions. I briefly mentioned in part 1 that I have always been a miniature painter, no art background at all. I just liked models when I was a kid and picked it up as an adult, like hopefully many of us. And I've never actually done anything 2-dimensional properly, and I guess I'm trying to do this piece to the best of my ability. So yeah, I'm not messing around. I really want this 2-dimensional backdrop to be really good. Painting a miniature with a backdrop has been a goal of mine for ages, and I just haven't got round to it. I definitely felt a little bit intimidated by it just because it's not my expertise. I feel really experienced and confident with miniatures, but I've done no 2D painting before, and I'm hoping that a lot of you are in the same boat and you maybe fancy giving this a go, you just haven't taken the plunge yet. And I'll take you through my thoughts for trying it for the first time and hopefully create some kind of tips. But I will have to say that I'm not an expert with this, so I feel it's difficult to call it a tutorial. I'm just going to show you what I did to get the result. And a spoiler is I'm actually really happy with how it turned out, but I didn't know it would. I was so pleased with the building of the base and the composition I'd created. I got really excited about what the end result would be. I knew the backdrop would make or break the piece, or well, I just knew I could do everything else because I had a vision and I was confident with it. But having not done a backdrop before, I felt I really needed to get it done. So I started to do what I always do with projects, and that's go onto Google and just have a look at a load of images and references to get a feel of what I fancied. So I went to Google and I looked at woodland fantasy art, just, to see something that would fit the style I liked. And I tend to like the ones with the cooler greens in the background. And I liked, that kind of more atmospheric, dark and cold environment as opposed to sort of warm and happy greens. I then had a bit of a brainwave, and that was to look at our very own Cult of Paint artwork that we had done for Anna, our first ever miniature. This art was done by an artist called Thomas Elliot, who is absolutely fantastic. And we're very lucky because we managed to get him to do several pieces of art for the Cult of Paint sci-fi range, and now he actually works for Games Workshop, and he's producing some of the most amazing artwork I've seen from Games Workshop, and it's actually on the front covers of a lot of the Age of Sigmar army books, which is super cool, and we're super happy that he's got that job. But it's sad for us because we definitely would love some more coloured art from him. But I thought it'd be really cool to kind of reference his work, almost emulating it, and I could definitely learn from it too. And it's just nice because, it's a Cult of Paint piece of art, so to reference that obviously would be really cool for me. I really love in the Anna artwork the cold green colour, it's almost like a mint, and I love all the detail of the faded trees, and it's all very soft. And one thing I really liked was the kind of light rays that were going across it, and these were things I felt like I could emulate if I had a go. So I started to pick out some colours, but I knew that I was going to try and reference and learn from this piece of art and hopefully get a good outcome. The main colours I'm using are going to be both from Vallejo Model Colour, and it's going to be German Uniform, which is a very desaturated greyish dark green, which is fantastic for the environment we're trying to create, and Green Sky, which again is a very pale colour, but it's quite desaturated, and I've actually used that one before and it's lovely, and it was very similar to the tones in Thomas's artwork and the other artworks I looked at that I enjoyed. So I thought I'll start out with these colours and I'll riff from there. So back to the plinth, and I went for some Chaos Black Spray, tried to kind of, get even coverage, but I didn't need to get everything as I was going to brush over every single part anyway. So I begin with some quite heavily diluted German uniform, and I'm keeping everything pretty diluted during all this because I want everything to be soft. One thing I did know from the 2D painting is that you want to try and keep things not too sharp, and it just doesn't work as a background. So we need to keep all the kind of detail like the trees reasonably soft, and that will help to drop it back away from the actual 3D detail. So I'm going to be making this very brushstrokey, so I'm just kind of being liberal with the paint, and I'm going to build this up gradually. It's quite freeing painting like this. You can see I'm not really being precise, I'm just getting some paint on there, and this all adds to texture in the end anyway. The paint's diluted though, so anything I don't like I can cover up. We don't want physical texture. I still want a lovely finish, but yeah, we want it to be quite, artistic looking, so not having everything super perfect and precise is going to help out. And to be honest, I just need to get some paint on here, so yeah, we're just smashing on some colour and seeing what happens. Initial thoughts are though that the tone is correct, so I think the German uniform was the way to go, but it is important how diluted it is because this will affect how it looks when it dries over the black. So one quick thing I did was just mix some Rhinox hide with some green and basically just base coat all the trees because I thought, well, I should get the base coat done now in case I do a lovely job of the backdrop and I mess up when I base coat the trees. So I changed this a lot later on, so maybe just plain Rhinox hide or something would be a nice base coat for now. So back to the backdrop, and I add the smallest amount of green sky to the German uniform. There's quite a difference between these two colours, so just a little bit of green sky will change the tone quite a lot. And you can see it's way more opaque now as well, and I actually just try and get a relatively smooth and flat background now, but there's still a few brush strokes in it, and I make sure they're sort of in the direction of the trees that I'm going to be doing later. So I have a look at the artwork and I love the sort of trees, and I think what I'm going to do is paint some lighter colours and then leave areas dark, and they're going to form the sort of tree trunks that are in the background. So again, I've added a little bit more green sky, and I start to add some light where I know it's going to be really bright. So you can see my brush strokes kind of going in that one direction, which is eventually where I'm going to paint those light rays. And yeah, I'm just kind of building up this light area in the center, but I will leave some areas that are darker. And you can see I leave sort of the two sides having two tree trunks in the background, almost like shadows to the physical trees I've painted, and we'll just see how this looks when it's dried. So at this point I was like, okay, yeah, I think I can do this, and I start to add another little bit of green sky, and actually you can apply the same tone twice. It's so diluted that I can build up a second layer with the same mix and it just becomes more opaque. And I start to get a feel of where I want the tree trunks to be. Keep looking at Thomas's art and seeing, well, how many trees will look good. And I still wasn't 100% sure at this point, but I was getting a good feeling, and the colour was right, so I was okay with that. I hope you don't mind the sped up footage. It's quite a large area, so it does take me quite a long time to paint it all. But I think actually when it's faster, you can kind of see what I'm trying to create easier. So you can see I'm just leaving previous layers and they form the trees. And like I said, try not to do really strong concrete lines. If you have really sort of strong lines, then it won't drop into the background. Like I said earlier, everything needs to be soft, and having the diluted paint and painting in this kind of wishy-washy way definitely helps. And you can of course soften the lines with glazes, but I just tried to paint everything in this very loose way anyway. And at this point I started to think, yeah, okay, I think I can pull this off. This kind of looks like a little bit like Thomas's art, but definitely not quite there yet at this point. I stuck the miniature on and I thought, you know, the miniature does cover most of the background. It doesn't need to be perfect, so just relax, do the best job you can, and it will look cool because the colour's correct and that'll give the atmosphere. So basically I was just trying to give myself a little confidence boost and be like, it's cool, it's going okay, just, yeah, try the best you can, but you've never done this before, so don't be too annoyed if it doesn't look incredible, you know. So with more green sky in the mix, it looks very pale now, almost looks like white in comparison. And I start to have a little play with those light rays, so I'm just doing quite fine brush strokes, still with my large brush, but just using the fine tip, and just start to play with that look and what it could possibly be like. So yeah, you can just see me kind of really experimenting, like I'm doing brush strokes, but you can see me thinking in between and sort of processing if this is working or not. I added a little bit of pale blue, which is just a light cold grey basically, just to stop it from going too green and keep that cold atmosphere with the kind of bright light. And with this very light colour, I do start to form more trees and they do become more obvious. But again, yeah, that edge is quite loose with the diluted line, so I still think it's kind of working at this point. And I also draw some vines that are kind of going across to match the ones I have going across in the front there. I add a second layer of the same colour, but I'm just kind of moving in a little bit to maintain those soft lines, but build up the intensity of the light in between. And you can see I have quite a few trees now painted into the background, and yeah, it's starting to look okay. Now I need to give it some real punch, because in Thomas's art the light kind of bleaches out everything, so the light kind of covers all the detail where it's hitting. So I take some pastel yellow from AK, ice yellow from Vallejo is also cool, and a little bit of white, and I add a touch of both of those to my colour. So yellow obviously keeps it a little more like sunlight, but white makes sure it doesn't go too yellow and punches it up a little bit. So finally I move to a smaller brush and I start to build up intense light, and I'm quite cautious at first because you can see I'm kind of just covering a small area. This whole thing is new to me, so yeah, I'm just trying stuff out, being cautious and seeing what happens. Like I said, I don't feel like this is a precise tutorial, but I'm just showing you what I did, and hopefully, yeah, you can take that just giving it a go and experimenting sometimes works out, but it's good fun in the process. So I'm being the most precise I have so far because I've got a good feeling about what I'm doing with it now, and I keep checking Thomas's art and looking at the light rays, and yeah, just doing fine lines to create those light rays going across, and then just gradually building up that kind of intensity. The other thing I noticed on Thomas's art was there were lots of little dots of the other colours, and it was almost like things floating around in the forest, but I really liked what this did to the piece. It kind of made it seem busy and added to the atmosphere. So I had all the colours I used before on the palette, and I decided to add these. So I did a combination of long brush strokes, which could be kind of like tall plants and grass, and then I also did lots of little dots that could be things floating in the air. And this added texture was really nice. It just added a layer of interest to the piece, and it was also useful to kind of cover some of the areas, and yeah, it just distracts. And I liked how busy it made the floor seem. Obviously had this much denser lower down, so yeah, it was supposed to add that density and busyness to the bottom, especially where there wasn't the light. So yeah, I really enjoyed this step, and it was super easy. So just use mixes of all the different darker colours that you used before. So I was feeling pretty good at this point, so I did a bit of housekeeping and did some black on the top just to tidy it up. And I also tidied up those vines because a lot of my brush strokes basically got white to the top of these, so it all looked a bit messy. So tidying those up and tidying the black allowed me to look at what I'd done so far and see if I was happy. At this point I was feeling relieved because I thought it looked okay, and also happy because I felt I'd achieved something new. And that's the cool thing about trying something you may be scared of, is when you do, you might not pull it off first go, but sometimes you can surprise yourself, and that's kind of one of the best feelings you can get out of painting is, well, for me it's feeling like you've progressed. And just by trying something new, you have progressed, right? Because you're going to learn something from it. And yeah, like I said, I was worried about how this would go because I really liked my base that I'd made, and didn't know what it would look like having not done 2D before. I knew that it wasn't amazing or perfect, but it turned out better than I anticipated, and I was happy, so that's all that counts, I think. I often chat and show my work in progress to my good friend Mr. Richard Gray, who I'm sure you've all heard of. And Rich actually does have a background and is much better at 2D painting than me, so I showed this to him to just kind of see what he thought. I was scared of the feedback, but you know, feedback is a gift. And he said it was cool, but he thought the light rays were a little strong. And I did agree with him. You could see the brush strokes and the sharp lines of those light rays maybe a little bit too much. So what I thought I would do is use the airbrush to soften this and kind of just glaze over the top of it. I was definitely scared about doing this because I was actually really happy with what I'd done. So I was almost like, don't want to risk it because it could make it better, but it could make it worse. So I was nervous going into it, but I am a confident airbrusher, so I thought, let's just go for it. I mixed up on the palette a sort of generic light colour, which had a little bit of the green sky, a little bit of the grey, and a lot of white. So I couldn't do like an intense white because I think it would ruin it. So I just made a kind of off-white, greeny, generic colour that I thought would help to soften everything up. So you can see me spraying this mix over the trees, and I do think I went a little bit low down. I, in retrospect, think I should have just sprayed the kind of the light rays to soften them. I think maybe it looked better before on the lower half, but it's fine. We've done it now. But it definitely helped on the top, softening all those little lines, so I think that's a good result. I focused to soften up those top areas, and looking back at this video footage, actually I think having a little bit of that white light on the lower trees does help because it almost gives it this kind of misty look, and it does push it further into the background. So I'm not sure if it was better before, but I've done it now, so I'm just going to make peace with it. But the top area definitely looks better. So I think I've finished the background. We're going to grab my print. We got a lovely print of the artwork from Thomas, and let's put it directly next to it and see how it looks. And hopefully you can see what I was going for. I think I've done a pretty okay job. And yeah, thanks Thomas for doing this awesome art for us a long time ago, but it's really cool to be learning from you and like I said, keeping it in the family with some cult art. But yeah, I think that's not a bad attempt. I was happy. 100% it could be better, and there's loads of things that could be improved, but I think I've done the best job I could. And putting the figure on there, yeah, I'm excited now. I think I've got the scariest bit out the way. It definitely gives that atmosphere and frames this awesome figure. So yeah, let's go. Looking forward to painting the bits I hopefully am more confident with. So that's actually it for this video. It's a really funny one for me to, record this audio for basically. And like I said, it kind of doesn't feel like a tutorial, because normally when I do a tutorial, I've got loads of teaching points and things that I'm really confident with that I want to show you, and exact processes. But this was me learning and almost learning on the job, but it's really nice to be able to share this with you and speak really honestly that I was worried to do this and I was literally making it up and trying to work it out, but I was just observing others that are good at this. So I looked at Thomas's artwork over and over and tried to do the best thing I could. And I have to say, it's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my miniature painting for a while. It's ticked off a big thing that I wanted to do. You know, must try a backdrop. Come on, you've been painting miniatures for ages. I love models that have backdrops, yet I've never done one, so I definitely want to do another one soon. You know, you might see me get addicted and everything's going to have a backdrop this year. But I do think you could copy the process I did if you like that kind of look of the faded woods. I do think it was quite successful, and since I was aiming for it to look like Thomas's art, I do think I've achieved that. So yeah, but the main thing I wanted you to get from this video is to have a go at stuff. And I'm always saying that to people because they always say, oh, I'm intimidated to try this. And I always say, just do it. So I felt I couldn't be a hypocrite and I had to do that myself. As always, I'm super interested to know what you thought of this video. I've never done one like this. So yeah, the feedback from you guys will be really interesting for me. And if one of you has a go at doing a backdrop plinth now, then that's a success for me. So that is cool. The next video I'm looking forward to because we're just going to paint the trees, do the best moss effect I can muster, and do a really nice sort of rocky riverbed. So lots of natural effects. So I'm really enjoying creating this base, and it's a real pleasure to share these tutorials with you. So until next time, have fun, and I'll see you then.